sitting there before. I know there's a way out. The world feels like it's caving in. Those dark thoughts, don't let them win. Just stay. Just stay. I know it's almost more than you can take. Please just stay. I swear the light will find you someday. So just stay.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another week of the Just Stay podcast. Thank you for joining us for another week. We are so excited to welcome Melissa Schrade on to our episode this week. We're excited to hear her story and to make these connections with people. I met her at a CSP meeting that I spoke at a couple weeks ago, and I will actually have her go into what CSP is and how she came to be a part of that group of people.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor. Community Suicide Prevention is based out of Idaho Falls, and I've been involved with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention as well. And I love the organization. We've done a walk several years here in Pocatello. And when I became acquainted with Community Suicide Prevention, they're locally based, and they have a bigger presence here in Southeastern Idaho. And all of the fundraisers that they do, they actually put the benches in the parks. Like they have these beautiful tranquility benches that they put in parks all throughout Southeast Idaho. And I think even up into Island Park. So I just fell in love with the organization. Yeah, they're beautiful. They actually, if you sit in the middle of the bench, I'm going to be emotional, but I think that's probably a norm on your podcast. At least. Yeah. So if you sit right in the middle of the bench, they have this beautiful artist that has created these wrought iron wings. So if you sit right in the middle of the bench, it looks like you're an angel with these gorgeous wings. There's one in Centennial Park. That one was dedicated actually the day after I lost my daughter. And I was told, because I wasn't aware, because I was, not out, I was out of my mind, but the mayor actually spoke at it and we were really good friends. And so they said he was really struggling through that dedication. I've since seen the bench. I've actually sang at the rededication of it, and it's beautiful. It's peaceful. So CSP is a really great organization. They're based in Idaho Falls, but they let me do a fundraiser here in Pocatello every year called Light the Night, and I invite all my theater friends and my singer friends, and we do a huge, kind of a vaudeville kind of review show. So they're just a great organization to work with. They're very supportive. Community Suicide Prevention. They have a lighthouse logo, and they're just fantastic. So I'm a board member, and I'm always in awe of how much people do that are on the board when they have the meetings. They're like, so I'm a professional this and this and this and that, and I'm like, and I'm a board member and I like to sing, but they love me. Right? Yeah. I'm like, I don't have all of the degrees and stuff, but I'm enthusiastic, so they let me stay, and I love them.
That's amazing.
I've only had a couple of interactions with CSP, but they've all been really positive. Everybody's very welcoming.
They're amazing.
They approach it from a very balanced perspective, I feel like.
Yeah.
Where there's emotion allowed in their group, and also there's a lot of logic as far as what needs to be done and what they can do to help and advocate and that type of thing.
Yes. And they're the money stays here in Southeast Idaho, and I love that part.
Yeah. Yes.
Melissa, I was going to ask you, I'm sure you were expecting this, but if it's obviously you can give us as much detail as you want, but could you kind of explain, I guess, what led you to becoming a board member of CSP and kind of
Absolutely.
your experience with your daughter?
Yes, and I don't hold back. And so, like, kind of maybe a spoiler alert or something if you're triggered by my story, because a lot of people don't like to describe how, and it's integral to my story because there were some things that happened that I think were just divine intervention on my side, even though this horrible event happened and I lost my daughter to suicide. So my daughter struggled with gender identity. Her name is Madison, and I found out later that for the last couple years of her life, she was going by Adrian, but I was not informed by this school district. And so one of the things that I did after I lost my daughter was petition the school district down here in Pocatello to make it not necessarily a requirement, but at least a nicety to inform the parents if their child is going by a name other than their birth name, because I wasn't informed. And so, practically speaking, I didn't know that she was having those gender identity struggles until one of her teachers called me and said, "Hey, we missed Adrian in class." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, you have the wrong number." And they're like, "No, we have your child in class." And I go, "No, you don't. My daughter's Madison. I hate to tell you this. She's been going by a different name for an entire year." And I called the school and I was like, "Don't you think there should be some sort of policy in place, not even necessarily for permission, but at least information?" And so through the course of events, I've petitioned the school district, and it wasn't just me. There were a lot of things that changed. And so now School District 25 does have a policy in place that if the student wants to be called something other than their birth name, they need to check with the parents first. And at first, people are like, "Well, the parents won't accept it." And I said, that's fair, but I feel like you're undermining us as parents. If you don't let me know that that's what's going on with my child, let me parent that kid, warts and all. I love that kid and I don't care what she wants to be called. I'm going to love her either way. So that was part of my daughter's struggle. She struggled with gender identity. And at the end, we had her on medication, or so I thought. And we had her in therapy, and I called her Adrian. It was really hard for me to say he, and it still is. And I love my child. And when I talk to other people who talk to my child as a male, I always refer to my child, and I try to be respectful of that boundary, but it's just been really hard for me to say he. So those signs that we all think we're paying attention to, we completely missed. My kid was she loved drama, amazing piano player, had a job, all these things. We just thought, well, she quit the job, quit the theater, quit the piano, and just thought it was a phase. We went to an Imagine Dragons concert in August, and I actually have her on tape because Dan Reynolds is also a huge proponent of awareness. He was raised LDS, and he doesn't like bash the LDS religion, but he's very, very intent on making sure that anybody, and not just necessarily LDS, but any Christian denomination that feels if they're lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, that they feel that they can communicate and it's not shut down, that there's not this shame. He's trying to erase that shame and that stigma. And so she loved going to those concerts with us. And there was a time in the concert where Dan Reynolds, he's very emotional, which is part of why I love him. And he started to say something like, we don't like take a moment for those that we've lost, because he's lost a lot of friends who were gay to suicide because they just didn't have anybody to talk to. And that dynamic has changed so much because of Dan Reynolds. And so I have my sweet little kid on tape in the background, and you can hear her saying, "It's okay, just breathe." And I lost her a month after that. So I treasure that little video. And we were close. My husband got us way expensive seats. So Dan Reynolds was within. Yeah, it was amazing. Anyway, so the morning of, my sweet kid had not felt good the night before. And one thing that happens a lot of the time is before someone completes suicide, they get an uptick. And so we were all sitting around Sunday dinner, and I was cracking her up. She was hilarious. She was relating with the family. And so we are all thinking the meds are working. She's doing great. But what I've found out since is that once these kids have made that decision, there's like a sense of relief for them once they've committed. And so they have this uptick in energy, and we all thought she was doing great. And so she wasn't feeling good. So I let her stay home from school that day, and she stayed with her dad because we're divorced. And so we split the time, and he's always been very supportive. I called her that morning and I said, "Are you okay?" And of course I'm fine. And I asked the question that I've asked because we'd had her hospitalized prior because she had told her counselor she wanted to take her own life. So we'd put her in the behavioral health unit in Idaho Falls. And so every day, do you feel like harming yourself or others? Do you feel like harming yourself or others? And I never missed a day with the question. And that was the day she lied. She always said, "No, Mom, I'm doing okay." But this morning I said, "Do you feel like harming yourself or others?" "No, Mom, everything's fine. I'm great. Don't worry about me." And I said, "Well, I know you're sick, so let me come get you and I'll baby you at my house. Let me baby you." And her answer was very adamant. "No, we stay with Dad on Monday nights. I don't need any help." And it was odd because I was like, normally if she's sick, she's like me and she's a total baby. The only people worse than that are our husbands, and we know that. Anyway, so I was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "Make sure you eat." And then I said, "Take a picture of what you eat." And so I said, "I love you." And I hung up. And the last words that were on her phone was in all caps, "Let me love you." And that was the last text I sent her. And around 1:15, her father's house is out in the Indian Hills area, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's off of Bannock Highway and it's south of town, and there's actually an elementary school called Indian Hills. And at the time, my little boy was 9, and my husband said, I said, "Go out and get your sister and yell at her for not answering her phone." So my husband picked my son up, Lincoln, and took him to the house and said, "Go in and get Madison and yell at her for not answering her phone." And my son went through the top floor of the house and came back out and said, "She's not in there." And my husband said, "Of course she is. She's sick. She stayed home from school." So my sweet little boy went around the top of the house, and my daughter actually completed suicide in the basement in the laundry room. So my little boy went down the stairs, and he reached for the door of the laundry room. And he told me later that he immediately felt sick to his stomach and something almost like an electric shock from the doorknob. And something told him not to open the door because his sister was on the other side of the door. And it'd only been about 15 minutes. With the coroner report, it'd only been about 15 minutes. And so when I say why I describe what I do, it's because of that little, I call them tender mercies, that little special thing from God that prevented my sweet little boy from finding her. Because I have 40 years on the kid, and it was still so devastating to me. But I was so grateful that her little brother at 9, and he even told me later that he kind of felt sick to his stomach all day and he didn't know why. So I was grateful for that. So they came home and I was like, something's not right. So I drove out to the house, and I myself went up around the top of the house, and it was a real eerie quiet. And I went down the stairs and I opened the door, and she had completed suicide and she was gone. And I, of course, started screaming and crying, and I ran out the door, and I was on the lawn in this neighborhood. And I mean, I was like, as any mom would, I was just a lunatic. I was help. And some people started to come around, and I was screaming, my daughter's gone. And one of my really good friends had come, and there was actually somebody from like the police department or something that made it. She said, "Listen, we need to go down in at 2. Don't go down by yourself. We're going to go down together." So it was good that this person was there because it was part of law enforcement, and it was helpful that they went down together. So they went down, and my sweet little friend said she checked her pulse and she was gone. And so the police came and the ambulance came. It's just surreal when something like that happens, because I just talked to my child literally a few hours before, and when people say, I mean, it's been, like I told you, 3 years, 4 months, 1 week, and 1 day. And some days it feels like forever, and some days it feels like yesterday. Some days I do okay, and then sometimes I'm right back there opening that door. Anyway, so that they took her, and they, we had to plan a funeral, and so many of her friends came, and so many of her friends came that knew her as both Madison and Adrian. And I said, I don't care if how you knew my child. My child did good in either group, and my child made everybody laugh. She was a fierce defender of the underdog, which was so ironic. So, through a course of events, I found American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Then I also found community suicide prevention, just by way of attending these bench dedications, and met this wonderful lady, Jan Eastman. Yes, Jan, I just name dropped you. And they were just so welcoming and so wonderful. And they have, as you said, they have a logical / emotional perspective that helps you feel wanted, but yet you can express how we all feel. I call it walking around with a gunshot wound, because you still have to get up and you still have to be there for the kids that are still here. But there's this hole that never quite gets filled. And I don't know if you can see this shirt. Can you see the shirt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she was a member of the Century High School Choir, and they had a contest for designing the shirts, and she won. It wasn't awarded posthumously. She won before we lost her. But they were pulling the shirts out of the box, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a swath of music right here, and it's Century High School Diamondbacks. And one of the kids said, I think that's a song. So they went over to piano, and the guy starts to play the piano, and it goes like this. Da 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 da. Do you know what that song is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Her last act of defiance was rickrolling the entire choir. Yeah. So this is never gonna give you up on the shirt. So
That's amazing.
right. So everything. Yeah. And coincidentally, not just about every time I get in the car, you can guess what song comes on the radio. Yep. I'm like, get it, Rick Astley. Okay. So I know that, like, because of what I believe as far as like the afterlife, I know that my child is at peace. I know my child is safe, and I know my child is progressing. I miss my child terribly, and if I could change any part of it, I would. But some of the things that have come out of it and the friendships that I've made, it wasn't very long after that I lost my daughter that my good friend now, and I didn't know her at the time, lost her son in the exact same way. And a few months after it happened, we decided to talk to each other. And it's such a strange thing to have a bonding with. We didn't know if it was going to be weird. And once I met her, I was just like, okay, I'm never letting go of you. You're stuck with me forever. And we decided to start a mom's group down here in Pocatello, because within a year, 4 different children took their lives, and they were all 15. My daughter was 15. Her son was 15. There was 2 other moms. They were all 15 within a year. And so we contacted these moms, and we all said, okay, we're going to meet. And we met at Mocha Madness in Pocatello. And it was just at first a little, and then once we started talking, there are just things that other moms know and feel that if you haven't been through something this horrific, you don't understand. And so we all just breathed this collective sigh of relief, going, I feel that way too. I feel that way too. It's okay to be angry and sad and miss this at the same time, because you go through a range of emotions hourly, daily. I mean, I'd love to say daily, but even after 3 years, sometimes it's minute to minute, sometimes it's hour to hour. Sometimes just before I got on the computer, I was trying to find this shirt, and I found a shirt of hers in a corner and I was like, oh no. Sometimes there's just things like, we did the paper route, and we hated the paper route. Anybody would. But every time I drive down that street, I remember getting up at 6 o'clock, and we'd listen to Lizzo, because that was who was popular. And so even my boys say, Mom, I can't even listen to Lizzo because that's the Paper Out song, and it makes me think of my sister. So there are always memories, and I cannot say that I am grateful. And I don't know if then in this life that I will ever say that I'm grateful that it happened. Like, I'm not grateful that I had to find my child, but the things that have come out of it, and the things that I've learned about myself, and the humility and the gratitude just for existing that I feel now, that part I'm grateful for.
I feel like as a parent who has gone through child loss, especially in this way,
Yeah,
you look for every little thing to be grateful for. And so
right,
it may sound so odd to the outside world to hear you
right,
say that.
right. I know that's, yeah, to the outside world. But most of the stuff, like I said, when we're in the moms group and we talk to each other, and the things that we say to each other, we're like, could you imagine somebody from the outside listening to these conversations? And I said, well, I don't care, but yeah, I can imagine that it would seem a little odd. But it's such a relief to be able to talk to those moms. If you ever want to come, let us know. We'll put you in the texting group, and you can totally come out.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I feel like there's two different ways that those invitations get received. And I remember when my son passed, a lot of moms reached out to me and wanted to connect.
Mm-hmm.
And
sometimes it's just too soon.
Yeah. And it almost made me feel like I appreciate the invite to your club, but I don't want to be a part of your club.
Like who would want to be a part of that kind of club? Who would ever ask to be in a club like that? Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't want to be. Yeah. So
I felt more resistant to it. But now I find myself reaching out to people that I find are more recent, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Because I'm the oldest. I'm literally physically the oldest. Yeah. And I'm the most time has passed. Actually, there's a mom that came in, had lost her child 6 or 7 years ago, and we just found her a couple months ago. So for a long time, I was the mom that it had happened. You know what I'm trying to say? It had happened the longest time ago. And
you were the most veteran.
There we go. Yeah, great veteran to be. But yeah, the new ones, it's hard because you really want to reach out, because you know that if you can just get them there, that sigh of relief knowing, but if it's too soon, you gotta, I couldn't have done it if it wasn't the right timing for me, because it's just, there's so many emotions you have to process. And so we reach out and we wait, and nobody's ever offended if somebody says no, thank you, because we know what that feels like. So,
yeah. And it's also interesting to me because I think to the outside world, some of the things you are saying may seem a little callous.
Right.
But when you've been in it, I know that you've probably had to do a lot of work to even get to the place to be able to say the things that you're saying.
That almost seem detached when I'm telling the story. Yeah. Oh no. Every emotion is there, but the more that you get used to telling the story, if it helps somebody else, I will say I will do anything. I will tell you anything. I don't hide anything. I'm very open, because if it helps even one parent, if it saves one parent, one family, one person from having to go through this. No offense, I love being on your podcast, but you know what I mean? Keeping one person having to be on the Just Stay podcast, then I'm willing to do anything. And I actually I haven't gotten in trouble yet, but I have 988 magnets, and so I kind of stick them everywhere. So, I mean, everywhere. Yeah. If you go to Walgreens, they're still on the power box. And I put it there 2 years ago. Yeah. So, I have them on the back of my car. I hand them out to people all the time. And there was a kid that I met the other day that I could just see was struggling. And I made sure that kid knew how great she was. And I've seen her since, and I got her name, and I said, oh my gosh, it's my favorite kid. And you can just tell when those kids need a little extra, and you don't know what kind of kindness. You have no idea what you say how it could alter somebody's life. If there's a kid who's thinking about it and you can say something positive, you have no idea. And a lot of people say, you're doing a lot more good than you know. And the fact is, you don't hear about the ones you saved. You only hear about the ones that we lost, Nobody comes up to you and says, oh my goodness. Well, I've had a couple people say they've helped my family. But you know what I'm saying? You hear more about the ones that you lose than the ones that you help. And so if the ratio is different, I'm willing to say or do whatever it takes. And I don't need to hold back. I never have here, really. Like my family jokes, because I've always said I have the ability to remain silent, but I lack the capacity. So, yeah. And I don't have tact. I don't know what it is. I've never known it. So, yeah. And I make this up. I said, when they were in heaven and then we were all standing in line for tact, I thought they said fact. And I said, well, I got mine straight. So I left the line. I've actually made that up for me because I really don't. I don't have the filter that says too far. So
yeah. Well, I think that's so beneficial in this space.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's refreshing and it's hard. And the thing that's hard about it is you can't hide from the facts no matter how hard you try when somebody faces them with you as bluntly as you do.
Yeah. And I've been told, like I said, I'm so docile and so quiet and so shy, but I've been told that there are a lot of people that don't want to tell or let on that their child completed suicide because their stigma and their shame. And I was like, well, and I'm sure that that's true for a lot of people, but I've been open from day one because as I said, if I can help anybody, I don't hide it. This is what happened. And this is how our family was shattered. And after I lost my kid, we were cleaning out her room. And one of the signs that we missed, I pulled the bed back and the medication was, because I would okay, take it. I'm going to watch you take it. So she acted like she was taking her meds. And then as soon as I left the room, she stuffed them under her bed. So when we were cleaning out her room, there were meds all over the floor. So if I could say one thing, I would say be vigilant with your kids as far as medication and therapy. It might not change anything, but it might. But stay vigilant with that. And because she was doing better, we relaxed with her phone privileges. There we go. When we first had gotten her out of the behavioral health unit, I was monitoring everything, and then they are good at letting you think they're doing better. And so we relaxed on the phone privileges. And later on, and so that's another thing. When anybody asks me, I says, go through your kid's phone, make them show you the password, make them show you what their last search, and they're going to be so mad at you, but they're going to still be there the next day. So have that awkward conversation, make them show you everything on the phone, because I guarantee you will be surprised at what you see in those searches. So that's one of the things I'm really, really vocal about, amongst many other. But yeah, so important, because you don't know what these kids are being exposed to, especially if they hide it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
How would you say, I'm not going to say, I hate when people say healing, because we never heal. Right. We mend, right? We mend, but we'll never be the same.
Right.
How were you able to cope with life enough to keep going after the loss of your daughter?
For about 6 months, I didn't do much. For about 6 months, I got up, brushed my teeth, stayed in my pajamas. And a lot of people for the first couple of months are really supportive. And so I had a lot of family support and a lot of my friends support. They kind of, and I'm sure you're aware, they kind of filter off after a few months because nobody knows. Some people assume there's a timeline, and no, there's no timeline for grief. So for 6 months, I didn't do much. And then after I found my friend Rachel and after I found CSP, I, kind of started to walk through life again. And like I said, it's been over 3 years, and sometimes it's still minute to minute. But I think being open about her story actually has been healing, because trying to hide behind it just keeps it festering. So, and when people ask me how I'm doing, I've told people, don't ask me how I'm doing if you don't want the response.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as one who knows, and when I talk to my friends, I say, how are you doing? And tell me what you really are going through. And so, how are you doing? Okay, it's a day-to-day process. It's a moment-to-moment process. I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So for my part, I love everybody. I don't care what church you go to. I don't care any of it. I love all people, walks of life. So, but for my part, going to church and attending the temple has made me feel a lot closer to her. So that has been a huge part of my healing, because I joke with people, but I get the best connection there. It's not dial-up internet when I'm at the temple. It's full on like DSL satellite talking to her. So that's helped me a lot. And it's like I said, everybody's journey is different, and I don't judge anybody in any sort. But for me particularly, that's been a huge healing thing for me, to be able to go there. And for a time, I was like, I'm not going anywhere near that building, because I'm so mad at everybody in the world and God. And I'm not, I went through that as well. I'm so mad at God. I'm so mad at you. And I've had a really hard time, harder than any of the other moms, because I made it about me for a long time. And I still have a hard time, because I was like, how dare you leave me? And I made it about me. And that was a huge stumbling block for me, because we go to these mom meetings and they would like, I forgive my child, and I know she wasn't in her right mind. And I'm like, I don't forgive mine. And they're like, why? And it just was so hard. And I have since, just because I understand now how much pain these kids are in that they don't let on, and just waking up in the morning sometimes for these kids when they're in so much anguish and so much mental agony that you're not aware of. So yeah, I admit it was a lot harder for me to forgive my kid than a lot of people, because I was just so mad at her deserting me. How dare you desert me? And I'm sure that's a lot ego based. And of course, my family tells me I have none of that. So it was hard, and it still is sometimes. But I've been able to say, I forgive you, especially because I know that my child is safe. Seriously. But it's been it's a lifelong journey, like you said. You mend, but yeah. And for a long time, I thought that by moving on, it would be betraying her memory. So I sat in it a little longer than I needed to. And I'm sure that makes sense to you. If you move on, if you move on and you somehow, the world keeps turning and you enter it again, that somehow you're betraying that memory. And so you have to stay miserable. So I had to learn that that's not true, that you can still love, live, and hurt all in the same day.
Melissa, thank you. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and then your honesty. I feel like I can't imagine, like I really can't. I have young children, and so it's really hard for me to put myself in your and Brandy's positions, because I don't even know what it's like to have an older child, And
Right.
so to imagine losing them, and not just
Yeah.
losing them, but losing them to suicide is something that I can't fathom. But I just really loved how you said, kind of how you shared with us those things that you've taken from this whole horrible experience,
Yeah.
and they're things that have taught you life lessons. And that's something that I really appreciate about Brandy, is that she says a lot, like, I'm not gonna come away from this a worse person, or basically along the lines
Yeah.
of like, I'm going to be better from this. I'm going to make sure that I can, be better. And I just really appreciate you sharing that, because I felt that same kind of that same theme with
Yeah.
everything that you shared. Like I mean, I can't even imagine trying to comprehend, like, coming away from that and making sense of everything.
Yeah.
But I just know that the way that you both are using your voices to share your experiences and to share what you've learned since, like, I know that that's changing the world, that's changing people's lives, and I just really respect you both. Like, that is when you said it's like walking around with a gunshot wound, like,
Hmm.
I mean, that was a description that was kind of like palpable to me. Like, I tried to imagine that, and I can't even imagine trying to, like, just carry on. That's something that I've, personally watched Brandy do, and she just, you have no other choice. You just got to keep going. But
Yeah.
I just really, I have a lot of respect for you, and I'm so grateful that you are so honest about your story, because that's really impactful for a lot of people.
Thank you. Yeah. Nobody wants to be in the club, but if I'm going to be in the club, I'm going to make sure that something good happens. Just like
Yeah.
Brandy,
Yeah, I think I'm not sitting here on this podcast called Just Stay because I want to be.
Right?
I kind of have
Nobody
the
ever has.
same,
Yeah.
like, my goal in life would be that this isn't necessary to
Right.
have to talk about this, that this isn't, like, if we could shut down and never push record on that computer again because it's not necessary, then
Yeah.
that is my goal. That is what I would love to do.
Right.
Unfortunately, like you said, we hear about the kids that we couldn't save, but we don't always hear about the kids that we affect. Um, every single news article that I've seen this year since my son passed, it kind of breaks your heart because you know that
Yep.
after the obituary and the funeral and that
Casserole parade.
yeah, yeah, that there's a family that's just completely broken.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it gets to me every time I read or hear of another kid that just couldn't do it anymore. And it's so
Couldn't.
understandable.
Hmm.
It's so understandable that once you understand the pain, that you can't blame them.
I had a friend, it was actually her math teacher, and she said to me, I relate it to you're on the top floor of a burning building, and there's fire behind you, and this horrible fire's behind you, and your only choice is to either go back to the flames or jump off the building. And so these kids, going back to the flames is just not even a choice for them. So they just jump off the building. The uncertainty of that is feels safer than going back to that horrible pain.
They
So I was
don't
like,
view it as a choice.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if you became like, before it happened to me, I was not aware of how many kids, like, once it happens to you, you're hyper aware when you see other like the obituaries and you ask what happened. And so I'm all of a sudden I'm aware of all these suicides that I would never processed before it happened to me. I don't know if that's the same for you, but yeah, I was like, wait a minute, all of these people, that's what happened. So it's just astounding. And I don't love the fact that our mom group keeps growing, because it does. But I love the fact that we can get them there and that we can just share that. So,
Yeah. And I don't know, I'm sure that time that they get to spend in that group is so valuable to them. And it's, a breath of fresh air when you're now in the burning building.
right? Yeah. And like I said, if somebody was listening in on our conversations, they probably would think we're callous in how we're discussing it. But it's just so matter of fact with us. It's so nice to be able to say, yeah, I feel like this and that, and this was horrible. And people say stuff, and you're like, no, I'm not okay.
I feel like before we wrap up, I'd really like to get your insight on if there's somebody out there listening right now who is
Mm-hmm.
struggling,
Mm-hmm.
what would you
If
tell them?
you're not alone, you're not defective. for feeling those feelings. You are not defective for feeling suicidal or depressed. You are not a mistake. Call 988, call a friend, have an awkward conversation, say, I feel terrible and this is what I feel like. Call a trusted adult, but know that you are not defective for having those feelings. That's the biggest thing, is don't feel shame if you're depressed or if you feel like checking out. Those feelings are valid, and talk to somebody about them, because you are not a mistake. You are a miracle.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Yep.
so much.
Thanks for letting me on.
Yeah, no, that was, I'm so excited for our viewers to hear and see this podcast. And I just really appreciate your vulnerability and your honesty. And I know it gets easier to talk about the more that you do it, but it's not ever fun to talk about. So, and I just want to say to our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on another week of Just Stay, and thank you for being here with us. No matter how hard this week was, we appreciate that you are still here. We will see you guys next week.
See ya.
I see the